Michelle Stevens, it
Hmm.
is an honor to have you on the Humble and Honest podcast today.
It is an honor to be with you, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Michelle, we met at the Visionaries Conference that we had at my church, and you are not just a guest, but your spirit that you came in with, your wisdom that you had, it was just so wonderful that I said, I can't just have one conversation with this person. In fact, I said this even before we started recording. I feel like we're friends now, not
Hmm.
just a guest that I'm having on here.
Hmm.
But it was such a powerful time. And I want to thank you again for the wisdom that you shared that night. Um, but I'm also excited for this conversation. And I know that there are some listeners that don't know who the great Michelle Stevens is.
Hmm.
So, first off, let's start off with this. Who is Michelle Stevens and how did she get to the platform she's on today?
Hmm. I am a child of God. I am a mother of two boys. I'm a resident of the city of San Francisco. I am wife to Trey Stevens. I am a nurse practitioner, nurse scientist who geeks out over early childhood stress physiology and its linkages to adult health outcomes. And in my work, I have found myself from being a clinician to becoming a technologist, wanting to build technology to systematically reform the way that we deliver healthcare. I did this through my company, Oath Care, after the Hippocratic Oath, realizing that, yeah, healthcare does harm. And so um, we built a many to many model of healthcare where many practitioners, clinicians, therapists would serve many parents along the pediatric journey uh, and support them with anecdotal wisdom, tried and true wisdom, as well as the evidence based wisdom from science. And so that company actually wound down after 4.5, 5 years. And it made space for me to now join what I'm doing now, which is sales and partnerships for another tech company called Felt, which is in healthcare. We basically are trying to bring technology providers to the consumer space. So you think of like your consumer health metrics, like that are tracking your sleep or your eating or your exercise. And we deliver health specialists, coaches, providers right within that experience to provide a more seamless, engaged healthcare experience. And I'm also building a nonprofit called Act 17 Collective, where we are on mission to redefine success for those that define culture, acknowledging Christ in technology in society. That's what Act 17 stands for. And we do this through a series of events and follow up so that the folks in attendance can take a next step on their faith journey.
First off, incredibly prolific. It's incredible to see how you started off in what would be considered a completely different, in a sense, they cross paths, of course, this idea of medicine and technology and how we get medical care and best health practices to people is obviously with the use of technology, but how you've almost shifted into a completely different genre over time is actually really incredible. But also, your faith has been a primary part of that. And I'm very curious, what was it that brought you to faith? Were you always a Christian? Did
Yeah.
Christianity come to you later in life? And how is having faith impacted these industries where sometimes there is a level of, in every secular space, but I definitely think there's an idea in medical spaces, oftentimes, or tech spaces, where there's a little bit more of an agnostic or atheist dominant mentality to
Sure.
certain things.
Yep. I've been privileged to know the Lord my entire life. My family are East Coast Italian Catholic. which is like a whole identity in and of itself. But being raised Catholic, I was very much exposed to the rituals and traditions of religion. When I became a college student at Georgetown University, that was when my faith was challenged for the first time or questioned, where like I was hanging out with other people who didn't believe what I believed. And that was refreshing and authentic. And I
Hmm.
really wanted to dive into that. I even started dating my now husband my sophomore year of college, and he was raised as a Southern Baptist. And so we were just going back and forth with each other around questions and curiosities and challenges with our faith, our belief, and how we want to live that out, what we even feel like God is kind of calling us into. We would go to each other's church services on Sunday, like get a bagel in between, if you will, and really make a whole day out of it. And that really lasted through our marriage, even though my parents said, "Hey, Trey, if you're going to marry our daughter, you need to have Catholic babies and get married in a Catholic church." And he was like, "Let me get back to you on that." And then, yes, came around. But even in all of that, I found myself really trying to control, trying to control the way that my parents saw me and control my identity around, um, still being Catholic and my kids being Catholic. And also this identity of like, oh, this is kind of how I really want to express my faith, profess my faith within this like non denominational Christian community. I was in mom's group. I was in Bible study. I was in leadership and serving in my community. I was even leading Bible studies and just feeling like my faith was woven and expressed in all parts of my life. And honestly, one day I was just sitting in the back of church at Epic, and they were offering communion. And, non denominational churches usually have some sort of cadence or maybe no cadence around communion, but it's definitely not every Sunday. You're definitely not getting excommunicated if you don't receive. But that's how I felt what was going to happen to me if I received outside of the Catholic faith. And as communion was happening, I'm sitting in my chair, not going up, and all of a sudden I feel this bright, warm light shine across my face, and I start to get really sweaty, and my heart starts to race, and I hear a voice in the back of my head say, "Get up and go. I will take care of everything." And I literally was like crying all the way up, received, cried all the way back. And once I sat down in my seat, I did feel this immense peace, this immense knowing that God is the savior of my life and that I need to stop trying to save my own life, control my own life in this way. And yeah, now my faith journey is really one of how can I constantly surrender? How can I constantly um, die of self for the Lord?
Hmm. I want to lean into that. That's a beautiful story, a powerful encounter. Thank you for sharing that with me, first off. But before we started this conversation, I asked, "How are you doing?"
Hmm.
And you gave me quite an interesting answer. And thinking about that answer, and now remembering that moment that you had when God said, "Go, I will take care of everything," is actually so profound to see how there's this full circle. If this doesn't work on the podcast, by the way, I'll cut it out. Don't worry. But I want to ask, as comfortable as you feel, how are you doing right now? And how was that promise that you experienced then keeping you in the midst of what you're dealing with?
Stephen, right now I am in gratitude. I am in joy. I am in praise for the God that has brought me through what I would say is the last 30 to 40 days of fear, immense sadness, um, and just, I mean, like just shakable, um, not knowing,
Mm,
meaning, I guess fear kind of plays into this, but what I thought I knew, I no longer know. Meaning, um, when I am willing to put my marriage on the line, at the same time that I'm willing to put my physical, mental, emotional safety on the line, which maybe is hand in hand, but I felt like I was tangibly doing that with the 4-part series lectures that we were hosting for Peter Thiel on the Antichrist in San Francisco, which was a really real exposure of mental, emotional, spiritual warfare. That at the same time that I was wanting and willing to put my marriage in the same sort of place, I did not know that God views it all as one, and that God was really calling me in my life to again surrender, to die to self so that I can fully rely on Him, that I can fully surrender, be faithful to, be in the I don't know with Him. So it was just all one and the same. But
mm.
it all like came to a head all at the same time, which I don't know, maybe, you know, people talk about seasons or there's something that you're struggling with or wanting to overcome. Like, and maybe this is just, I was telling you, like my need for drama, like maybe being big Italian, an Enneagram 8, like I just love all of the intensity. And there's maybe a way that I created this. I can see that. But also, I can also see how God was like, this is exactly where I want you. And are you willing?
Can we back up a little bit? So you're doing a 4-part series with or for Peter Thiel in San Francisco. What's the series?
Peter has been studying the end times throughout history, economics, religion, politics, and really doing a deep dive on the end times in relationship to the Antichrist. And he has been revising this content for years now and felt ready to present it. And the relationship that I have with Peter is family. He's been Trey's investment partner for the last 12 years or so. Goes back even before that through their relationship at Palantir together. And so when I told Peter, like, this is what I'm up to with my nonprofit, would you want to host your lectures through the nonprofit? He said yes.
Hmm.
And yeah, we hosted them, and we did not realize the type of response we were going to get. But I can tell you the response was one of extreme threat to emotional, mental, spiritual security.
Really? From
Yeah,
people
like
that
what
were
I
attending?
sure, like
Again,
yes.
I just want to say, as comfortable as you feel. If you do not feel
Yeah, no, I'm
comfortable,
sorry. I'm actually like still in process with this, so please like hang in there with me and edit as you see
no,
fit.
I'll be as
Like
patient with you as you need. I just don't want to overstep, is all.
no, no, thank you. And I appreciate that because I can tend to be an oversharer. But as I am seeing it right now, I would get constant emails from self proclaimed demons, spirits, the Antichrist themselves. Jesus Christ himself, people bribing me thousands of dollars to get a ticket, people, Christians telling me how evil I am, to repent. How dare I put a gay man on stage to talk about Jesus? Or um, uh, uh, threats to harm my kids, threats to harm
mm,
Peter, threats to harm my husband. Um, uh, yeah, there was just a lot coming at us, our organization, my family, my friends, um, in terms of mental, emotional, spiritual. Um, I even was like, in one case, from a close friend, I saw like the face of a serpent, like come through, like as I'm talking to you, like eyes became slits, nose became wide, like teeth, mouth became fangs, skin became like this brownish, greenish, scaly. It was wild. Like I felt like I was this close,
mm,
this close to evil. And it was really scary. And at the same time, my husband and I were facing and almost like willing for the first time in our 21 years of marriage to really face the hard questions and the unanswered questions, of our marriage, of what we were up to, of what we were feeling, what we were dealing with, alone and together. And yeah, that was happening at the same time.
mm,
So that was also mentally and emotionally draining. And at the same time, with all of this hardship that I'm telling you, we were seeing profound support, love abounding in every direction from my kids, from our deepest friendships, relationships, around our wisdom table, our leaders, our colleagues, if you will, in work. So just lots of, without them even knowing anything detailed wise, and some knowing a lot of the details, family that like would never consider separation or divorce, or publicly letting folks know about marriage hardship, like really coming to our aid, to our defense, to our support with love. It was at the same time absolutely beautiful.
mm. I think there's, first off, thank you for sharing all of that. Before I even ask anything else, I do want to say I think there is something about the level of resistance is one thing. And I think there's often the difference between resistance that's saying this isn't working, retreat. But then there's also the level of, in the midst of resistance, also getting hints, inklings, full on shouts from God.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
You are you are on the right track. Do not be discouraged. In fact, this is actually a sign that you're doing the right thing, that you are
Yes.
experiencing resistance.
That was the message, Stephen.
Yeah.
Fight. Keep fighting. Stay in it. Don't run away. Totally, totally.
Hmm. What, taking it just a little deeper, what exactly, if you could summarize it, was the theme or the point you were going for in this four part? Like, we're talking about Revelation, we're talking about the Antichrist. What specific about that content do you think sparked such controversy amongst people?
I mean, it's Peter Thiel. He's a controversial character in and
Sure.
of himself, even without talking about what he talked about. And then you talk about the Antichrist, the end times, and that spurs on a whole different uh, bit of controversy. When was the last time you ever heard someone of power speak about the end times? Like even our president, even the greatest powers to be in the nation. I don't really know personally of folks that are willing to talk about the end times. Why is that? It's pretty. I mean, back I think in like the Renaissance times, we were talking about the end times a lot, or when close to times where we are in existential crisis, war, famine, the end times are talked about. But what Peter was really, I mean, over the course of 8 hours of lecture time, over the course of 4 weeks, like able to do a really big deep dive intellectually around the end times and asking all sorts of questions around that, to really help people think for themselves, to be honest with you, Stephen. And that's what maybe Peter would say about um, what he was up to, and also to consider Christ in it all, and who you believe in and why you believe in it. And Acts 17 wanted to come alongside of Peter and this intellectual content to support the heart of people wrestling with the mind, and all of this content, and really wanting them to say that that's okay, that you're wrestling with it. We're here with you. We're wanting to walk alongside of you in this journey. We want to help you take a next step on your faith journey, whatever that looks like. We have a few ideas that come to church with us, or come have a conversation with us, or, um, here are some things to read. And here's Alpha, here's Everwonder, and some other next steps to help people take a next step. But really, it was about showing up alongside of these folks and saying, like, you don't have to wrestle with these questions alone, and it is worth taking a next step on your faith journey, whatever it may be.
Hmm. Could we talk about Acts 17? Because that's actually the reason why we first met, because we had someone in my church that connected through Acts 17 and eventually had you show up and speak at our event. Can you articulate what is Acts 17, the genesis behind it, and maybe what's been the biggest win so far outside of this event with Peter
Mhm.
Thiel?
Acts 17 is a nonprofit organization that was really inspired by God, and came at the most unlikeliest of times. I was winding down my company at the end of 2023, and at the same time throwing the biggest party of my life for my husband's 40th birthday. And we ended up having over 220 people in our home in New Mexico show up for a 3-day birthday. Like, our wedding was one day, 99 people in a small chapel in DC. This was three times as long and three times as big. And on the third day, we thought it would be funny to host kind of like a Kanye West Sunday service remix church. And we did the best we could with that, knowing what we knew. And, everything from, oh, let's get like a DJ who remixes white church worship music to a trap beat. And thankfully, he was able to come to, let's have Peter, like, wouldn't it be hilarious if he like gave a sermon on um, whatever, he's feeling called to talk about. He ended up talking about miracles and forgiveness in this way that I'm still racking my brain around, but profound. And the response from that was, people were just like, that was awesome. I never knew Christianity could sound like that. I didn't know Peter was a Christian. How can you be gay and a billionaire and be a Christian? How are you a Christian in San Francisco, Michelle? Like, do you go to
Mm.
church? Like, what do you actually believe? And so all of these questions, all of these curiosities came through that event, which inspired to run a pilot in San Francisco, and run it back with Peter. And he did a talk on political theology, which, of course, are two things that usually don't go together. And we decided to run this sort of like in the same sort of style as the Sunday service remix. We did it on Cinco de Mayo. We had tacos and tequila. Similarly, with the first service, we had like caviar bumps, mimosas, spiked coffee, breakfast pizza. Like, we didn't just have like bagels and coffee. We were having elevated food and atypical food, if you will, drink. Um, We also hosted it in Gary Tan's converted church home. Um, Asked Canvas, I Hear Canvas, to come back and remix his beats. And all of this was an effort to subvert church in a way, um, maybe even be a little irreverent about it, all for the goal of having folks that are working in technology, that are even at the top of their game in technology, consider Christ.
Mm.
That they would come to get wisdom, be seen, and be able to get the gospel while doing it. And that when they hear what they hear, that they would be inspired to take a next step on their faith journey. At these events, over 60% are non Christian or on a sort of atheist, skeptic, non Christian path journey, if you will. Um, and so, yeah, that majority is makes for really interesting discussions and really fertile ground for folks to um, be introduced to the gospel. We're in this very pre Christian, at least in San Francisco, uh, environment. And so either be exposed to who Jesus is, and then be able to, yeah, take a next step.
I absolutely love that. And it's so needed, but unfortunately, not a lot of people are bold in the same way that I believe you have been, and some members of your team that have put it together, which is
Mhm.
incredible. And I think, and I, I'm sure you would agree with this, there's actually a greater hunger than we realize in a lot of those individuals that seem secular, that seem disconnected and disinterested in faith. Many of them are looking for hope. Many of them are looking for
Yeah.
something greater than themselves to attach themselves to. They just need that introduction. Can we talk about just a little bit how you navigate all of this?
Mm.
Because you and your husband, again, are very successful. You do everything with excellence. You have two wonderful boys.
Mhm.
How are you navigating faith, tech,
Mhm.
and family all at this fast, rapid pace in a way where you're not getting swept up by it? Because something else
We
about
have
you, Michelle, that I think.
gotten swept up. Yeah,
Okay, explain.
that's the God's honest truth is that
Mm-hmm.
we have gotten swept up by it, and this was the reckoning that I was talking about, that we have been in the last 40 days or so. Wow, yeah. But all that to say, we have been reminded by the grace of God, and God works through people, God works through us, God works through every living thing, and have been reminded to reorient our lives around Christ, to center our lives around Christ, to have Christ's voice be the loudest, to have Christ at the center of it all. Christ is at the center of our kids, of our work, um, of ourselves, of our personal lives, and of our relationships, between our marriage. And so, yeah, there was just a way in which we let that not be the case. And it led to a lot of suffering, and it led to a lot of poor decisions, and it led to a lot of disconnection, which is suffering, a lot of confusion. I think it also led to maybe God not working in our lives so clearly. Um, and so, yeah, I think we're just coming out of that season, with still a lot of work to do, a lot of like humbling and realizing to do around that. But like, I can still praise God in in all of it, and was praising God through even the worst of it, what felt like the worst of it. But I think all that to say, yeah, it is something that is always a threat. I
Mm,
think I think it will always be something that is possible to be swept up against unless it is actively fought against, unless it's actively considered. Um, it, I think there's something that culture says around not like regarding yourself or your wealth or your status or your whatever identity. Be humble about it. Um, there's a way that that can produce false humility. I think
mm,
there's something that we are really posturing ourselves around, like the reverence around our whatever identity, um, assignment that God has given us, that we are really seeing the light and the dark of it all and wanting to really keep that at the top of mind so that Christ can really continue to move, continue to work, and not be almost flippant or like ignorant or in a way like controlling of that, saying
mm.
like, oh yeah, that doesn't bother me, or that's not an issue for me, or that's not something to be concerned about. It is absolutely something to be concerned about, especially if you're saying that it's not.
I'm not going to put this in the podcast. I just want to ask, are you guys okay
Oh yeah,
now?
we are okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
God has kept us safe through all of the
Hmm.
threats. Not anything physically happening. Um, I mean, n even within we had cell phones um, in the auditorium. There were there were people that were planning on bringing weapons in, but, security scrubbed the internet and found the places where they were mentioning this. And we were able to stop that before they came in. There was also another person that was threatening harm to Peter and anyone who came through the back door. Um, like literally, he was on the ground, like saying this, and like a security person who was sweeping the building happened to be walking past this person at the same time and stopped that person. So like miracles like
Hmm.
all over the place around safety. And so yes, we have stayed safe. We are okay. Our kids are incredibly resilient. They have known what is going on between Trey and I. They know what's going on in our macro world, to an extent. We're, we're not like divulging every detail, but age appropriate. And we are just seeing incredible growth, wisdom. Um, they're telling us about their nightmares. They're telling us about their feelings, and those are opportunities that we get to pray into them, pray with them, go to the Word with them in that. Um, have other folks call upon other people in community to support us and them in that. It's just it's incredible, but
Hmm.
it's really weird. It's really crazy. But
Yeah.
yes, we are okay. We are safe. Thank you.
Well, praise God for that.
Yeah.
On the marriage front, on the family front, if you could just do this season all over again,
Mm.
understanding the weight that it had on your marriage, the thought, the anxiety, the stress, the division, is there anything that you learned or would do differently if you could just run the clock back? You know that this was from the Lord. So there's a level of like it's not doing this these series of talks, but what have you learned along the way that says if we are in this season, we're going to do this next time for our marriage or for our children?
I really err on the side of I wouldn't change a thing. I've
Wow.
had crazy hardships I've had stage 2 cancer, I've had colitis, I've had miscarriages, I've had really scary times with postpartum depression and anxiety that has led to me wanting to take my own life. There have been really, really extreme, not okay things that have happened, hardships, challenges that, early childhood traumas. I can't say that knowing what I know now, I would do anything different other than, which is the most important, just how could I die even more to self? How could I raise the Lord even higher in my life and have God really redeem it all? Was I really willing to lose it all? I think that's really the question. At the time, it feels like it. At the time, it's like, oh, I really feel like I'm surrendering, and God's so good. It's just like, okay, yeah, I'll take that. But I think the question in the back of my mind is always like, could I have surrendered even more? Could I have died even more to myself? Could I have put Christ on the entire throne of my life, on the entire throne of my world?
Hmm. Your heart for surrender to the Lord is just convicting, even to hear, because all the success, all the trials, everything, your heart is set on one thing, and that is to draw near, lift up the name of Jesus, um, which is not just inspiring, but is convicting to hear. Could I go through the same thing and still have that desire to just say, if I could do it all over again, I would have found more ways to lift up Jesus in the midst of this.
That's what the Lord
Because,
is teaching me, Stephen. Exactly. You don't have to have the crazy drama. Like,
mhm,
stop, Michelle. I think, like, that's the thing. It's like I'm creating all of it, all of this drama, just so that God can be like, okay, you want another opportunity to surrender yourself to me? Okay, okay. But like, that's the whole point. If my life can be a testimony to, like, you don't have to make it hard. It can be that easy, that simple. It's just I'm the one that gets in the way of me surrendering my whole life. And thankfully, we have a God that just is so merciful and graceful that just gives infinite chances. But I mean, I hope I can encourage you and support wherever you are on the journey. It doesn't matter. It's all about surrender in this moment. Like,
wow.
yeah, I think one thing that's really on my brain right now is that, like, Jesus's life, death, and resurrection is not a one-time linear experience in history. It's a model. And not only was it linear, yes, like his historical linear, but what if it's a model for our moment to moment experience? What if we are meant to live, die, and resurrect every moment of every day? And I think, like, John Mark Comer from Practicing the Way, like he talks about this a lot, like being these like disciples, being um, a way in which to really be like Jesus, be with Jesus, do as he did. I mean, like, I don't know. I've tried. I can tell you, like, I've tried to do it on my own, um, and it just leads to emptiness. It leads to discontentment. It leads to hopelessness. And I also know, with being in relationship with enough people, especially those with a lot of money, fame, and power, is that no matter how much they do, no matter how much they have, they still have a hole. They have a hole, and they all describe it as being right here, and they can't seem to fill it. And it is just leaving them hopeless, discontent, and empty. And I can tell you and save you maybe a whole lot of pain and suffering if you, in realizing that, in believing that wholly for yourself, you can possibly surrender yourself to something not only outside of yourself, but within yourself to submit to bow down to.
Hmm. Hmm. With all of the risk and reward that you've experienced, how do you hear God most clear in the
Hmm.
midst of all of this? Like, what are the practices that you have that help you get an idea of this is really God and not me?
It's good. Being in the Word. Being in the Word feels like the most clear, the most known voice of God that I can rely on time and time again. My own thoughts, speaking with other people, um, prayer and meditation. Like, there's a lot of me, there's a lot of other wrapped up in that. When I read the word and really put myself in the mindset of, this is you, God, I want to listen to you, God, and listening and reflect, like, kind of like the Lectio Divina method, I feel like that is the closest, truest, most authentic experience that I have um, with Jesus, and that's kind of like that's a kind of like a generalization, explain all to like satisfy an answer, but like I also hear God every different type of moment of every different of every day. Like, it could be in the car, it can be just breathing, calling to mind Jesus, having a conversation, a meeting. It's just like, I think the posture is like, can you allow for every moment to be a transformative moment? Can you even believe that that's possible? Can you believe that like there's something outside of yourself that wants that for you?
Hmm.
And then when you believe it, you can actually start to live in that reality. You can actually start to see it. But it takes a lot, it can take a lot, to get out of our own way to see it and
It
believe it.
does. It does, but what I think is even helpful about what you're saying is you're talking about the power of heart knowledge and that you've communed with God in such a way that, yes, you have your inner thoughts and you have other things of that nature, but it allows you to be able to know, hey, when I'm reading the word or when I'm walking and a thought comes, because of my familiarity in the word with when it comes to being with God, I know when that's him later on and not myself,
100%.
which yeah,
Yep. And
yeah.
and and really, like, oh man, my girl Rachel has really helped me just focus on God's voice being the loudest and really seeing, like, what do we know? Like, how is God's voice the loudest in your life? It's like, the word is life. Like, that is, I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the most realist expression of truth that we know that we have. Um, and and we know God moves and speaks through all things and all life. And I think there's even discernment of how we read the word as well. So that's really, it's tough, but for me, in my personal experience, it really does come through the word.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, there are powerful ways that I have experienced God's presence, God's work, God's life in and through others.
Wow. So let's lean into that. In our first conversation, you mentioned two unique things that you do in your daily spiritual walk. One, crying daily, which I'll
Mhm.
admit, never heard that before. So I would love to for you to expound on that a little bit. And then also the wisdom table,
Mm.
which was something that was very inspirational to me, and I'm eager for the listeners to get an understanding of this as well. So, can you explain these two things that you do and why are important to you?
Well, thank you. I can't take credit for either. I was inspired by morning tears through the forum that I practice conscious leadership with. And the idea is that, especially for someone like me who doesn't like to feel sadness, who tries to avoid sadness or heartbreak through all of my heroing, all of my doing, all of my controlling, to really be aware of that and to face what I'm unwilling to face. And so that looks like morning tears. The way in which I practice that is it's not always in the morning because I really do try to be in the Word in the morning, and sometimes the Word can inspire me to feel my heartbreak. But it can really be at any point in the day to think about the things that break my heart, to think about, to reflect on, to call to mind um, sadness. And when I feel my sadness, I can't explain it, but the phenomenon is love. It's a softening, it's an opening, it is um, a way in which I feel more gentle, I feel more cleansed, I feel vulnerable, like in a
Mm,
place of like innocence. Um, yeah, childlike. And so much of my structure, so much of my being wants to know and control and be strong and capable. And tears just totally flip that on its head. And for me, it's been a gateway to love. So that's tears. My wisdom table is kudos to Ben Pilgreen, my pastor at Epic Church, who wrote a book called Bring It Out. And he writes about this and inspired me and Trey to create our wisdom table around, I'm going to get it wrong, but the way that we're doing it is it's basically mimicking the 12 apostles. Jesus is 12. And who are the 12 in your life that you can go to for godly wisdom and discernment? Um, and maybe they're of different industries, of different walks of life, of background, but they're close to you, they're in relationship to you. And it's a way that you can really expose you and all of you, and in return, receive godly wisdom and discernment, questions, challenge, so that whatever you are facing, you don't have to face it alone. Whatever you are facing, you feel like you can not just hear the word of God through you, but through others and their experience in their lives. Um, so yeah, that's the idea of a wisdom table.
mm. I want to circle back to the tears though, because I think something that you said is really powerful is that you allowing yourself to feel sadness does not actually bring you into a deeper sadness, but is
Oh,
actually a window of opportunity for healing to enter in. It's it's kind of a cliche saying now, but God can't heal what you don't reveal is
yeah,
still nevertheless a great truth.
yeah.
And your ability to say, I feel sad and I'm also in a state of tears because of these things and feeling better because of it is actually a testament of I felt this, I acknowledged it, and I am stronger now because I felt that, not because I stuffed it and just pretended that everything was fine. So I think there's great wisdom in that and
Yes.
insight into how many of us can find healing. It is not the ones that just, and there are seasons and times, me and you are parents, where we just can't have we just can't feel what we want to feel in the moment. We have to be the leaders, we have to be the protectors, we have to be, whatever. But to not allow ourselves, every pain should have a funeral is the thing that I've
Mhm.
heard before. And a funeral can be a moment, a funeral can be something much greater than that, but it is the space by which we acknowledge something has gone wrong, And I am living now in a new reality due to that. That's all. That's that in and of itself is what a funeral is, whether there's a
Yes.
physical body or not. It is a level of something has changed in my life, and I'm now having to adjust to this new existence. So every pain should have a funeral, minor or major, but also God should be invited to every funeral,
Mm.
because it was even when Jesus was invited to Lazarus's tomb where resurrection happened. It's when
Yep.
Jesus walked past the what seemed like the processional of a funeral where a young man was dead and the mother was crying that uh, that he was brought back to life.
Wow.
Um, so we don't know what God will do in each and every situation, but we do know His character enough that things shift when He's invited in. Um, so I think that that's so powerful.
Mm.
Um, the other thing about that with this wisdom table is that I have a few mechanical questions, if you don't mind. So there's a level of you have 12 people. So this essentially isn't just a random group that signed up online. These are 12 people that you trust, that you lean on. And what are the questions specifically that you're asking in these wisdom tables that you feel brings about um the wisdom that you need? Because you mentioned that you don't miss these meetings, you almost prioritize your schedule around them, and that to me means you guys aren't just talking about the newest show on Apple TV and have you seen it or whatever the case may be. You're letting yourself be vulnerable the way you were with the tears. So can you give me an idea of what it looks like at your wisdom table?
To be clear, it's hard to get all 12 together at once. Sometimes I can think of two instances in the last 10 years where I've gotten the entire wisdom table together at once. And those were
You've
for,
been doing this for a decade.
yeah, yeah,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. Um, and two times that we've gotten our wisdom table together. And our wisdom table also changes as our life changes. Like you don't have to have the same 12 for the rest of your life. I think, people change. Relationships with God change for, better or for worse. And so it's okay to like let people go, to let things die, if you will. They don't have to stay in their same state. So all that to say, we've convened our whole wisdom table twice over really, really big things that we needed, like full on physical support, mental, emotional, spiritual support at the same time. What this usually looks like is like my husband convenes like half of the table and I convene half of the table, usually the women, he's convening with the men. Or we're also doing stuff like in couples at different times. And it's more or less like I know that these folks are also doing relationship with each other. And so there's a way in which we can kind of be efficient around the way that we share our lives together, because if we're all sharing, if we're all in communion with each other, that is a way in which things can be known, things can be prayed for, things can be supported around, things can be asked, things can be revealed. So I don't want it to make it sound like such a heavy lift. Sometimes there's just like a three of us that are going for coffee. Sometimes it's, we're going on a weekend trip together. Sometimes we're going to go do an event with our kids or our families or couples or one on one. So they're part of my wisdom table, and we and I don't know what Ben would say about this, but like we this is how we kind of show up. It's not only me asking questions of the wisdom table and what are the questions that I ask. I think what's more important is what we reveal. And what I'm really facing and waking up to is that I was also controlling what I was revealing. And I wasn't revealing the whole story. And I really wanted to kind of even get cleaned up or figure it out myself, which I think you were speaking to a little bit. Even with this wisdom table, Stephen, I was still performing in a way. I was still wanting to hold back certain parts until I kind of had it maybe more figured out or more articulate. And this season in life really woke me up to the consequences of that, which is I'm in a much worse place because I tried to control X, Y, and Z. So I think it's not only about the questions I ask, but the questions that my wisdom table asks and the willingness that they are able to ask. Like, do I have challengers at my table? Do I have discerners at my table? Or do I just have a lot of supporters and galvanizers and enablers? I think it's really important to think about the dynamic of your table to make sure that there are different geniuses, different ways that God has made folks to be represented at your table, to have this sort of like, fully represented um, uh, group of folks. And
Mm,
it's not going to get, you're not going to get it all right. But I think thinking about the diversity of your table, the perspective of your table, the life experience of your table. Um, yeah, where you actually need support the most. Like, what are the things that you're really wrestling with the most, or that keep coming up in your life as struggles? Like, who maybe is not struggling as much with that and can really lend support and advice around that. So, yeah, highly recommend reading his book to get more perspective
mm,
on like how it's constructed and how it's carried out.
for sure. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I think you bring up just a really great point of even beforehand, at least in my life, I have to give people permission to prod and ask follow up
Hmm.
because in my, not to call pastoring a profession, but essentially in this cultural
Hmm.
times, that's what it is.
Hmm.
Um, in my profession, I have to come across as I have the answer. I have solutions. I am always progressing forward. And there
Yeah.
is a thing of falling forward as well. So that's a reality. But I have to have permission for people to basically say, hey, are you being honest about that? Are you, can I push back on something that you're saying and feeling, and allowing for them to be able to speak with um, love, graciousness, but also boldness and cause for that iron sharpening iron to strike, but
Yeah.
for the sake of betterment, I think is
100%.
just such a big deal
So good.
for sure. Thank you. Well, our time is up.
Hmm.
And almost none of these questions that I asked of you were what I was planning to ask. But
Oh.
at the same time, I just feel like this was such a helpful, healing conversation. And I'm just so grateful for that. So, for those that would love more of what Michelle Stevens is producing and creating in the world, how can they keep up with your story, with Act 17, everything else? Fill us in on that.
I'm not on Instagram or TikTok. You can find me a little bit on Twitter. I'm really trying to stay away from social media. Email me, Michelle at act17collective.org. Love to have a conversation with you. Um, LinkedIn a little bit. Sign up for our Act 17 newsletter on our website, act17.org, to stay, act17collective.org, to stay up to date on next events. We are feeling called to come to New York, so excited about that. Yeah.
Like
Uh,
Act 17 or your whole family?
no, Act 17. Dear
Okay.
God, I mean, if God calls us to New York City, that's going to be a big one for us. But yes, we're open. We'll see how God works. But all that to say, yeah, it does seem like Act 17 is being called to New York, which is exciting. Um, and so um, yeah, the one thing I love most is um, hearing feedback, hearing story, and being able to be in relationship around it.
Well, that's incredible. And we're excited for all that is to come. And we believe the best is yet to come as well, for sure.
Mm.
Michelle Stevens, thank you so much for this conversation.
Mm. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for being you.